Good day, everyone. Wow, this crowd's getting bigger. That's pretty good stuff. My name is Mike Leibovitz, also go by Mike Leib. I work in the CTO office for Extreme Networks. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. A couple of reasons. One, that's where I was born. And two, that's where my company has our Wi-Fi engineering facility. So I get to spend a lot of time in the United States. Today, for some reason, I've only been speaking to Canadians, which has been really interesting and all by fluke, including somebody I'm sitting beside who lives 2 streets over from me. So that's kind of a pretty random thing to happen. Extreme Networks, we had the opportunity to participate at Super Bowl in 3 different ways. One, we provided analytics at the game inside of Levi Stadium. 2, we provided Wi-Fi coaches, which is actually a league-wide program that we started to help kind of as a courtesy for the fans to get on Wi-Fi and understand how to use Wi-Fi and or the apps. And number 3, we participated at Super Bowl City. And Super Bowl City was an idea that the host committee for the Super Bowl wanted to really create an area in downtown San Francisco specific to celebrate the 50th game, right? The 50th year of Super Bowl. And so the host committee asked Extreme Networks to come and put in a temporary network inside of the Embarcadero Market Street area. Has anyone deployed a temporary Wi-Fi network? Has anyone deployed a temporary Wi-Fi network inside of a major city? Pretty good advice is don't do it. It's certainly not the easiest thing to do, and obviously inside of a major city area, you are contending with everything in terms of other businesses, other Wi-Fi networks, and of course, service providers that happen to provide their own Wi-Fi network environment as well. A quick overview, essentially what the host committee did. Again, they peeled out some of the Embarcadero area. They set up a really big area with stages and all sorts of interactive fan experience things. Again, you know, the game at Levi Stadium was out in San Jose. Most of the tourists and people that were coming, they wanted to have an experience inside of the city. It was somewhat unique compared to previous Super Bowls where typically the fan areas are in and around the stadium. So this was downtown in the city area. So deploying in the city, I was trying to get some better pictures, but suffice to say, it's not an easy thing to do, right? When you start talking about conduits and running cable, particularly to have a network operating for 1 week, you're going to do this above city streets. You're going to do this as carefully and elegantly as you can, but it's not very simple. David Coleman was talking earlier about layer 1. Layer 1 breaks networks fantastically. When you put in temporary cables and you are terminating those cables, you certainly better test them, and you probably want to test them more than once. It's quite an amazing thing how quickly a wireless network will break when the wired backhaul is not working. So, you know, running cables across the city streets, not very easy, right? Certainly things that you need to take into consideration to get that done in a timely manner. Wired network. So, you know, at Extreme Networks, we provide both wired and wireless technology. So we have the luxury of putting in the wired back end of the infrastructure as well. A couple of interesting things when I saw this picture. It was kind of funny to me. One of these IDFs, that, you know, again, a temporary IDF, actually has a little bit of rain on top of it, which I think no one really expected. Need another microphone here. A little bit of rain, and obviously, as probably many of you see, there's quite a bit of garbage sitting underneath that box as well. One of the things that was actually kind of cool about the way that the wired network was built, so 10 gig interconnects between the switches themselves, running in a layer 2 loop. So we actually managed to convince the cabling guys to actually loop the entire city area that we got to participate in. We're using a standards ERPS, ERPS, Ethernet ring switching protection protocol. The funny story there was that we didn't actually have the last leg completed when the network got turned on. Our guys continually asked, it took us about 24 hours to convince them that we did need to complete the loop. They said, hey, everything's working, don't touch it, leave it alone. We said, no, let's make sure that the loop is is completed. And then redundant multi-provider, 1 gig internet feeds, so 2 different service providers and a couple of mechanisms to load balance out those internet feeds. So from a wireless perspective, again, temporary, right? You're putting things in, you're putting them on poles. You're doing this pretty much without any sort of design. So I know a whole bunch of you are going to look and say, oh my God, here we are talking about not designing Wi-Fi. Well, there's no way to design this. You pretty much need to spray and pray your RF and tweak it and tune it, right? So you're doing this on the fly. We chose to use 55-degree antennas. You can see it up there on the pole with an outdoor access point. So it was continually measured, tuned, optimized. But really, this is just a positioning exercise, right? This is moving an antenna and using your eyes and kind of your common sense as to where it's going to go. Probably not surprisingly, we deployed 5 gigahertz only. We played around a little bit with 2.4. 2.4 is not going to work inside of a city, particularly, again, where you have other wireless LANs and service providers that are providing Wi-Fi as well. So what did it look like? And I pulled some stats off our analytics system. You know, Monday through Sunday, what did the activity actually look like? We saw over 64,000 unique Wi-Fi sessions. I should back up to say that the last point on my slide there, single SSID, no portals, no authentication, no advertising. So nobody actually knew that this network was there, which is very interesting in terms of the take rate, right? How do people actually know that there's a Wi-Fi network? They have to look at it on their phone. So 64,000 unique Wi-Fi sessions through the week, which is pretty good for an unadvertised 5 gigahertz only Wi-Fi network. We peaked about 4,000 clients on the wireless network Friday evening. So the game was Sunday, for those that aren't familiar. So Monday all the way through Sunday, we were collecting these stats. But Friday night was probably the biggest party that was going on. So about 4,000 peak clients. We moved about 3.5 terabytes of data through the week. Everyone seems to be really enthralled by counting terabytes these days. It's not actually my preferred analytic metric to look at in terms of quality, but it's something that people can understand quite readily in terms of how much data was moved. This one I thought was pretty interesting. 59% of the client devices, so this is an average through the week, were capable of 11 AC. So close to 60% of the devices that we saw that associated were capable of 11 AC. So certainly clients are coming along and you know, becoming more capable. As the week progressed, the peak time shifted as well, right? So from a temporary Wi-Fi network, when you think about when people are going to use it, why they're going to use it, the peak time shifted from, you know, kind of the afternoon, late afternoon into the evening. So as the week progressed, more and more people were gathering into the night. Again, and just an interesting way to look at it and think about how your wireless LAN is working. And this one, which you know, I showed it to one of my colleagues, and he said that should be 100%. But this is a really interesting point, actually, and David was speaking about it earlier as well. But somewhere between 98 to 99% of clients are actively using DNS all the time. When you talk about Wi-Fi not working or, you know, slow Wi-Fi, when your DNS isn't working very well, it's going to break your Wi-Fi or at least give the perception that Wi-Fi is not working very well. Clearly the #1 protocol. So I think it's an interesting stat to pull out of the analytics and share it with all of you in terms of thinking about how to design and deploy your wireless networks. So here's the one that, well, there could be some controversy, but I'll try to explain what I did, and it's kind of difficult to pull a single event over a few hours and compare it to something that occurred over a week, right? And so I tried to do that, and this is more a perspective thing. I think people will kind of be interested in some of the stuff I show up now. What I'm essentially categorizing here are the top 10 applications that were used during Super Bowl. I categorize that by how much bandwidth they consumed, and I'll explain why in a second. And then I'm showing the percentage of fans that are using it. So the #1 application that was being used, and I did this in reverse order. I'm not David Letterman, so I could have started at 10, but I'm going to start at #1 anyways. The first application in terms of bandwidth that was consumed is iCloud. That may surprise some people. That may not surprise people. So during the event at Super Bowl, you know, about 70% of the fans, the devices were using iCloud, but 56% on average during the week at Super Bowl City. #2, iOS updates. So you had somewhere between close to 30% of the devices at Super Bowl using iOS updates. About 17% averaged over the week at Super Bowl City. Now this one.
Just out of curiosity, Apple server running cache those by chance?
No, nothing local. So it's all got to go out to the internet. It's all got to go out. The next three are really interesting, but I can't talk about them for certain reasons. I've been muzzled on those ones, so we'll continue. We'll keep moving on. I put them in for the sake of consistency. The next ones probably won't surprise you very much, but Facebook comes up as the number 6. 60, somewhere 50 to 60% of people are going to be using Facebook almost everywhere you go. The other social networks, they reign pretty well as well, right? They're certainly used very, very heavily in the Super Bowl. I thought the Twitter one was kind of interesting. Super Bowl game, over 22% of fans were using Twitter, only about 9% during the week at Super Bowl City. I'm not sure where or why that is, but hey, that's what the numbers said. And the last one I'm also not allowed to talk about, but if you find me at lunch or if you buy me a beer, maybe I'll speak about it. Now here's where things kind of get interesting, and I'll convert back to the other format of what I was calculating or looking at. So when I took the two top applications by bandwidth, iCloud and iOS updates, about 35% of the consumed bandwidth, so I spoke about 3.5 terabytes of data, about 35% of that was just on those two applications alone. And the really interesting one is that at Super Bowl, the game itself, about 50% of the bandwidth. So a lot of you have heard, and this is pretty easy math, I'm not a mathematician, but you've heard the 10 terabyte number. I'm saying that about 50% of that was used by two applications. It gives you a pretty good indication of what the majority of that network was doing. And certainly, I take I tip my hat to the team at Aruba and Chuck. Certainly the network performed quite well at Levi under a lot of pressure. So one other stat. This number just completely blew my mind, and so I had to share it. Last year, I kind of made a joke at Super Bowl 48, how many Blackberries were in the crowd. We profiled exactly 4 Blackberries. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Super Bowl 49 and Super Bowl 50, you're talking, let's just round it up to about 50,000 devices over those two games that uniquely the Wi-Fi. So what was the growth rate? Anyone want to take a guess?
6, 100%. 25%.
Pretty good guesses. This completely blew my mind, and it was the first stat, the first thing I looked at Super Bowl 50. 4 Blackberries. So the question then becomes, who are these 4 Canadians that went to both games? And I got it figured out. I took all the MAC addresses, I compiled them, and magically and contextually relevant to Phoenix, we found 4 Canadians, those being Steve Nash, certainly Wayne Gretzky, Drake, who apparently performed here at some point, and of course, a little bit of a stretch, but he's on his way to Aspen, my good friend there, Jim Carrey. Interesting stat, completely blows me away. So overall, Super Bowl City was certainly a great thing for Extreme to get to participate in. It was overall quite successful. I think the fans had a great experience, and that's really what it's all about, right? That's why the NFL is doing what they do in terms of why they put digital technologies in the hands of their fans, and if and when they want to go and build bigger from it. So with that, I conclude a little bit over time. I apologize.